Welcome to the network, the educational podcast designed to help our community navigate the four areas of life that I like to call the funky four corners. I've had the opportunity to interview some of my favorite people with one goal in mind: to help the spiritual, physical, mental, and financial health of our people as we navigate this thing called life. Subscribe to the network. You never know, you might need it. Welcome to the network, everybody. The free educational podcast designed to help our community navigate the four corners of life, the funky four corners. So I've had the opportunity to interview some of my favorite people, and I got one of my favorite people back with us today. We got one goal in mind here at the podcast, and that's to help the spiritual, physical, mental, and financial health of our people as we navigate this thing called life. As I said in the intro, man, listen, subscribe to the network because you never know, you might need it. Today's guest, I told you, is already one of my favorites. She's been here before and she is back. So today I am bringing Dr. Sharlene Sinegal-Decuir back. Today is the History Quarter. Dr. Sinegal-Decuir's History Quarter. So today our topic is post-traumatic slave syndrome. Now, remember, we're giving you Black history in bite-sized pieces. So we only got 15 minutes. So I am done talking. Dr. Sharlene Sinegal-Decuir, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Good to be here again. So I thought it would be interesting to talk about post-traumatic slave syndrome because it's a big part of the African-American community. It's actually an argument that was created by Dr. DeGruy in her book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, America's Legacy of Enduring Injury and Healing. And basically, the argument is that generational psychological trauma stems from the institution of slavery and the oppression of African American people. And it is manifested in the Black community in several ways, in ways of self-doubt, self-loathing, lack of self-esteem, feelings of anger, and most importantly, internalizing racism yourself, unconsciously or consciously. And when I say internalizing racism yourself, that's a really, really big one because that's the way Black people see themselves. And so what the argument is that basically we are allowing other people to tell us who we are. If you remember back in 1903, I think it was Du Bois who wrote about double consciousness and the fact that African American people have to live with two different lenses, right? One for the white world, one for the Black world. But what we see in this intergenerational trauma is that Black people are now more so than ever not even realizing that they do have trauma. So a lot of trauma that we get stereotyped as, Black people having bad behavior and doing XYZ, men leaving their families and whatnot. But it's because we have been told and we have been brainwashed in this type of system. And the way the system is set up with all of the obstacles for African American people to try and achieve that, that's a really, really big one. I think one of the biggest things too that we have to think about when we think about internalizing racism, that actually leads to mental colonization of the African American community. So what we are doing in essence is maintaining white supremacy for the white people, right? Because it's so ingrained in us that we are not beautiful, we are less, we don't belong in certain areas, those types of things. And because of that, again, like I said, we are somewhat contributing to the systematic issues of racism in the United States. And we have to get out of that. There was a point, I think, in the 60s, late 60s, Black is Beautiful movement. That was one of the movements that we tried to reprogram ourselves to let us know that we are beautiful, that our community is beautiful. And so I just thought it was very interesting to, kind of bring up this topic and see what others are thinking.
That is really good. So I want to ask this. So when we look at, we talked about generational trauma. So, how many generations? Approximately how many generations?
So
Are
this
we talking 10, 12, 15 generations?
we are talking since the time that African Americans hit the soil in 1619. We have been systematically brainwashed to think that we are less than. And so that trauma goes all the way back. It goes all the way back, breaking the spirit of Black men and causing friction within the African American community. It goes all the way to the point of where African American men couldn't protect their families and their women's from being raped and murdered and all these different atrocities that were committed. And so if we link what is happening today in some of our communities with a lot of anger, with aggression of Black men towards Black women, this can be traced to slavery and oppression.
And you're saying that we can make a direct connection to what we see today, to the trauma that our community and ancestors have experienced due to the transatlantic slave trade
Absolutely.
and slavery on these shores.
And slavery on the shores, exactly. And that is why, I often say we have to learn our history, because we have to know who we are and who we were before we were slaves, because we were not always slaves. You've heard we were kings, queens, and astronomers and doctors and all these different great things in the continent of Africa. And so we need to go back to figure out who we are and who we were before we were told that we were less than.
And that statement highlights the significance of what's happening in states like Tennessee, what's happening in states like Florida. So if our kids aren't going to get this in school, right? Because let's just be honest, many of our kids aren't getting it in school as well. How can we educate our adults? How can we educate our parents? How can we educate some of our grandparents to really know and understand who we are as a people? Because if you don't know who you are, if there's nothing to attach yourself to, like I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I believe that knowing who we are anchors us. And if we don't have an anchor, we just kind of drift. We're just drifting culturally. We're drifting. We don't know our root. We don't know our values. We don't know our mores. We don't know our belief systems. So we're just drifting into the abyss, into the middle of the ocean.
Absolutely. And I think that if you want to start somewhere, start within your own family. Start talking about the trauma within your own family. We as Black people are very, very good at covering and hiding and moving on and never really getting to the root of issues within our own families. And once you get to the root of the issues in your own families, then you take it a step further and you go and you look up, well, what did Papa do? How did he get here? What's going on with that? And you can see different traces throughout the family. And it could be problems that would, again, stems all the way back, right? Because a lot of this is also somewhat learned behavior. We have been taught, we learn how to see ourselves in America. That has to be unlearned. And even for me, you would think, oh, accomplished and whatever. I still have moments where I go into a certain room and I have to self-talk myself. I belong here. I'm worthy. I have, the information I still have to do that. So where does that come from? Right. Also, the whole thing with Black is beautiful. Like I said, too, I really love Essence because at Essence Fest or whatever, they always have my Black is beautiful. Right. And you have people on the screen that talk about how their Black is beautiful. That is really, really good because it's ingraining. It's being shown to us in clips. And then we are digested and we're like, well, my Black is beautiful. I belong here, and those different things. And that's what we need to do. We need to be positive. We need to throw out the stereotypes of people telling us who we are. And we need to, create our own narratives and become who we are meant to be.
That is so good. We need to be positive, because if we have to unlearn these generations of trauma, so that when you said that, here's one of the first things I thought about, things that we say. Yo, black ass. You know what I'm saying? So you hear something like that enough, right? And it'll start to sit different in your spirit, right? Well, dang, is something wrong with my black ass?
Yeah.
You know, like, and then you associate whatever's being said with black, and then, black becomes
Negative.
a negative connotation. So,
and even with kids, the biggest thing that you can do is put affirmations within your kids, right? And so every single day, I tell my son how much I love him. I give him hugs and kisses and all those different things, because in my family, we were never the ones to say, oh, I love you. We knew the love was there, but it was never said. And I tell my son how handsome he is and how smart he is. And he can do any and everything like anyone else. And don't ever doubt yourself. Those types of things. Right? The types of things that I wish I would have heard from my parents. And I know I didn't hear it from them because they didn't hear it from their parents. Right? And so in some type of way, we have to break those generational curses and start with our own kids and grow them from the roots up, so that they can become trees and sprout out to the next generation that they are great. And that's where it starts, right there. We maybe can't help the older generation, but we can do something about the new ones coming in.
That's right. That's right. I often like to ask this question: how many trees are in one apple? So when you think about it, the number of seeds that are in one apple, each of those seeds can become a tree.
Right.
Which will produce apples, plural, in multiple seasons with multiple seeds. So that's how we have to think about the way we talk about ourselves, right? We have to positively affirm ourselves. So that is how, because the question I wanted to ask you was like, okay, X number of generations of trauma, how many generations will it take to unlearn and undo that trauma? But if we plant those affirmations, then we can quickly overcome.
Absolutely.
I think we can do it in one generation.
I think so.
I think we can do it in one generation.
I think so, Mike. I think since we know, if you know better, you do better. And we can definitely do better. We can do better by the next generations coming, our grandkids and so on. We can teach our kids, some of our kids are older, but we still have to be like, man, how you doing? What's going on? Let me know the issue. And here's the thing with a lot of African-American parents, especially the older ones, they judge. We can't judge. We have to validate. We have to accept. And we need to show unconditional love to our kids. We also need to challenge them. We need to let them know that if we don't challenge them, somebody else will challenge them, right? And we have to challenge them in a way that is going to grow them, right? And grow the next generation. It's not challenging by, cussing them out or XYZ and saying, I can't believe you did this or that. Ask them why they did it. Try to figure out what their logic is and correct that situation. And so a lot of times, even correcting my son, I sit there and we have conversations. Why did you do that? And he'll tell me. And I said, well, how did that make you feel? And he'll tell me. And then I say, okay, well, maybe don't you think you should have done it this way? Or, so we need to learn how to talk to each other in a different way as well as parents. And, like I said, just nourish.
That is so good. Listen, y'all, we are coming up to the end of this month's History Quarter with Dr. Sharlene Sinegal-Decuir. So, Dr. Decuir, I'm going to do a quick recap, and then I want you to give us one piece of advice that we didn't ask for. Okay, so let me do a quick recap. We are talking about post-traumatic slave disorder and the generational trauma that it has caused. But Dr. DeGruy and myself believe that we can reverse this in one generation. How are we going to do that, y'all? We're going to talk about the trauma in our own families. We're going to be positive. We are going to affirm not only ourselves, but all of those around us, because it's very important in the way that we see ourselves. And then for those of us who have mistakenly judged people in the past, we're not going to judge anymore. What are we going to do? We're going to validate, and then we're going to challenge for the purpose of growth. Dr. Sharlene Sinegal-Decuir, this is your history quarter. And now please leave us with one piece of advice that we didn't ask for, but you're going to give it to us anyway.
Write your own narrative and don't let anybody tell you who you are or who you can be. Be yourself.
Be yourself. You heard her. Listen, everybody. Welcome. I'm so glad y'all came in today. So if you're listening to this on audio, or if you are watching on YouTube, I need you to please hit that like and subscribe button. Then tell a friend to tell a friend. Listen, y'all, this is the network. We have one purpose, and that is to help you spiritually, physically, mentally, and financially. Those are the areas that we like to call the Funky Four Corners here on the Network Podcast. So we're done for the day. Listen, y'all, subscribe to the network, because you never know, you might need it. We'll be back next month with Dr. Sharlene Sinegal-Decuir, and we're talking about Carter G. Woodson.
Yes.
Dr. DeGruy, thank you so much. Until next time, y'all, make love the culture.